Look what I found. These are a bunch of books that me and my sister wrote when we were in elementary school. And I know exactly which book I want to start with. That, I assure you, is Glue. It's nothing else. So this book is actually kind of cool. I made it a hardcover book out of an Amazon box, and then I just glued stuff into it. It's a comic, graphic novel, or whatever you call it. And I think I wrote it in like 3rd grade. Oh, wait, guys. I was into Dogman. I don't know if I can do this with like the stand right here. You do the, I don't know if it's really bad, but it's funny. If I see any more while I'm doing my reread, I'll show you. But, yeah. Okay, so the book starts off with the, like, wolf pack in their den, and there is a, like, mountain lion / cougar thing, and he goes and attacks all the wolves, and there's some sound effects, like grr, and pitter patter, and shing, and roar, and then all the wolves fight him, and they chase him off, and then they for some reason have to leave, even though they already chased off the cougar. So there's no real reason for them to leave, but they still do. And in later, a little wolf pup wakes up, and he comes out of the den, and he can't find any of his family, but he sees the cougar, and he somehow escapes, even though it doesn't really show him escaping. It just shows him next to the cougar, and then he's in the forest, so I guess he teleported away. And he hears some squawking, and he finds a baby raven. He says, "Hi," and I is Timmy. I don't know why he says I is, because I could spell, I knew how to say I am when I was in like 3rd grade, but whatever. And the wolf pup says, "I'm Fang," and then the wolf is like, "Oh, why aren't ravens in trees?" And the raven's like, "Oh, because I fell." And then the wolf makes like a big deal about it for no reason. He's like, "You fell? Or you what?" And then the raven's just like, "I fell." And then the wolf's like, "Oh, I can help you get it back up." And then the raven's like, "How?" And the wolf says, "I don't know." And then they hear some rustling in the bushes, and a baby cougar jumps out, and for some reason he starts laughing, and he thinks it's hilarious that a wolf and a raven are like friends, and then they just met each other, and then and the raven's like, "Oh, stop being so mean," and the wolf's like, "He's right," and then the cougar's like, "Oh, are you guys in love?" And I didn't even know what being gay was back then, but whatever, it was funny. And then they're like, "No!" And then the cougar changes the subject. He's like, "Why are you guys so small?" And then the wolf's like, "'Cause we're kids. And so are you." And then the cougar's like, "Oh, me, a kid? How could a dog know?" And then the wolf's like, "Oh, dogs know plenty of things. Are you a mountain lion?" And then the cougar's like, "Yeah, why? Because..." And then the raven's like, "Because." And then the dog's like, "Because why?" And then the raven says, "'Cause he's so small." And then the wolf's like, "Oh, good one." And then it just shows the raven's head for some reason. And the cougar's confused. I'm confused too why that's a good one, but whatever. And then Fang the wolf is like, "Oh, are you the son of..." And then it trails off, and then the cougar's like, "The killer? Yeah." And then the wolf's like, "He killed all my family then the cougar's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And the cougar says, so? Like, what? Bruh. And then the wolf tells his backstory that he was with his family, and then he heard a bump when the cougar jumped down from the rock that he was standing on. And then he said all of his siblings hid, but he still stood his ground until he heard a howl, and he howled back. And then he heard the pitter-patter of someone's footsteps. And then he heard a shing, and he knew that was it. And he knew that was when his pack died. So then he hid. And then he fell asleep, and he woke up, and all of his pack was gone. So then he went off and went to find a new pack. And then he says, and here I am. And he spells it here like listening to something. And then all of a sudden they're hiding behind a bush, and they hear a dog, or beagle looking dog thing. I don't even know what the frick that is. And then it's like, a woo, woo, a bark, bark. And it's like chasing after a fox. And he tries to catch the fox. And the wolf is like, oh, why are you smiling, to the cougar? And the cougar said, well, humans are just so weird when they hunt. And like, who hunts like that? And it's just a picture of like a stick figure grabbing onto the tail of a horse and just like being dragged away. I refuse to draw like humans normally. I would just draw like stick figures. I still do, but it's funny. And then the cougar's like, right guys? And then he's all alone. And then we cut to the wolf and the raven chasing after the dog and the fox and stuff. And then somehow the wolf, even though it's like a puppy, it like runs faster than the dog, and he runs in front of the fox, and he's like, grr. And then the person's like, the human's like, oh, this guy's for the zoo. And then he shoots them. But it turns out just to be like tranquilizer bullets. But the cougar jumps in front of Dagger is the name of the cougar. Dagger jumps in front of Fang, so he gets shot instead, and he falls asleep. And then the human goes, oh, these guys are rare. And then he grabs him. And then he shoots the raven and the wolf and the fox again. And then they like pull them all on sleds that they just randomly got. And for some reason the human's wearing a hat now. I don't know why. But then all the animals wake up in the zoo, and then the raven, he wakes up without any feathers, and then he's like, oh, where did my fluff go? And then it turns out like a parrot stole all of his fluff, and then he took the fluff back, and then he was wearing it again. And for some reason we see the fox waking up. I don't really know why. And then the cougar wakes up in a cage, and the dog is pulling the cage, and he goes through the doggy door, but the cage won't fit through the doggy door. So he tries to pull it through, and then the cage falls over, and he gets mad, and then the horse comes and just breaks down the entire wall. I don't really know why he did that, but he did. And then the cougar sees the door is open, so he just crawls up, and then he runs away. And then he sees, someone runs over to a zookeeper, and he's like, oh, Mr. Zookeeper, the wolf fainted. And then it shows a picture of Fang being fainted. I guess. And then someone's like, oh, what happened here? And then and another person, it just says dead. I don't know why. He's not dead. But then the person comes in, and then the cougar runs through the open door and kicks Fang awake, and Fang says, ow, and the cougar goes, oh, not the time, even though I don't know why. I mean, you just kicked him, so of course he's gonna say ow. But then the wolf just says okay, and they run away together. And then they run and shut the door, and then the guy has a mental breakdown. And then there's another guy who's like, oh, dude, relax, I got a key. And then they I guess get out, and it cuts to the cougar and the wolf like scaring people for some reason. And then the wolf's like, "Oh, what's your name?" And the cougar's like, "Oh, it's Dagger." And then the cougar's like, "Oh, who should we rescue next?" And Dagger's like, "Oh, we should rescue Timmy." And meanwhile, Timmy is having a mental breakdown about all of his fluff being gone. And then Fang's like, "What's that?" And the cougar's like, "Oh no!" And they run into the bird cage, and Timmy has his fluff back somehow, and Timmy climbs onto the cougar's tail, and then they walk away, and then what's his name? The wolf, I guess. It was like, "Oh, now we have to save the fox," and then the cougar's like, "Oh no, we shouldn't save the fox," and then I was like, "Why?" And then he's like, "Because he is not one of us," for some reason, even though I don't really understand that. But then Timmy like pecks him in the head, and he like falls over, and they're in a bush. They like teleported into a bush, I guess. And then there's like these two people, and they're like, "Oh, we must take your zoo and kill all your animals." I don't know why they needed to do that, but I guess so. And then the wolf and the raven are like, "Oh no!" And then the cougar is fainted on the ground, and Timmy's like, "Wake up, you dumb cat!" And then the wolf says, "Common, let's go." I guess it was supposed to say "come on," but it says "common." I don't know why. And they free a lion, and then he just walks away. And they go on a montage of like freeing all these animals, and they're all happy. And then like, "Oh, there's one left," and then they save the fox. And Dagger's being a jerk about it. So then Timmy chases after him and tries to peck him, and then the dog comes and sees them, and he chases after them. And for some reason, the horse and the guy appeared there too. And then the cougar's like, "What's that?" Because he hears them running away, and it's the animals running away. And then what's his name? Timmy, he's like, "Oh, it's a dog, you cat." And then for some reason the cougar says it's the wolf. And then Fang is like, "Oh, Timmy, can you," it's like Fang disappeared here. And he's like, "Oh, Timmy, can you fly up and spot all the animals?" And he's like, "Okay, but I can't fly." And then he climbs up a tree for some reason, and then this bald eagle comes over because America. And he like comes over and helps him learn to fly. And we get our first flipperama of Timmy flying. So then we go again back to the present, and Timmy's like, "Oh, thanks, Mr. Bald Eagle, Mr. America." And then they see a bunch of animals coming to get all of our friends. And then Timmy's like, "Oh, there's some bad guys," and then they run away. But then Dagger is like, "Oh, don't worry, you guys run, I'll hold them off." And then we get a flipperama of Dagger fighting nothing, and then he scratches the dog's eye, and he has like a scratch over his eye now. And then Dagger's like, "Oh, you're creepy now." And then the dog is like, "Grr," and then he runs away. And then we go back to Timmy flying around, and then the macaw comes over and he's like, "Oh, I'm cold." And then Timmy grabs some of his fluff again, and then he gives it to the macaw, and the macaw's happy. And then and then he gets captured by this big cougar, and it turns out to be Dagger's dad, the killer. I actually named him that because I could not think of any names for him. I remember specifically that. And then, so then he's like, oh no, Dagger's coming to kill me. And then, he's like, oh, you're not Dagger. And then Dagger comes and fights his dad. And, we get a panel, that's just called it says Face Off at the top, and showing them just staring at each other. I don't know why, but yeah. So then they come and they're about to fight, but then the dog and all the bad guys that want to bring them back to the zoo, even though they're gonna get killed anyway. They come and they try to capture all the animals again, and then Dagger is still fighting his dad, and then there's a bunch of headshots, and it says, "Stay tuned for our next book." I don't know who us is, but it's just me writing that. And yeah, we left off on a cliffhanger, and we'll never know what happens. So that was an exciting book. It was pretty bad, but it was exciting. See you guys in our next video, and bye.